Welcome and thank you for clicking on my video. Today we're going to be doing some technical analysis for the SPY Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, Nvidia, AMD, and Meta going forward. And we're going to talk a lot about these ranges as they are telling us something very, very interesting. And could we see that overall downfall of stocks? Could we see some kind of crash? Well, at least right now, these ranges are telling us a little something. So you got to get these on your charts, and we have to get into that technical analysis starting off with the SPY. Now, just on the daily here, I just wanted to talk about these ranges, right? We want to give you guys the weekly ranges, okay? 522.27 for the SPY to the upside, and we have 499.43 to the downside for the weekly expected move. So this is all the options market has expected at this point on the weekly scale. And then on the daily side of things, 516.31 to the upside and 505. 39 to the downside for Monday. Okay, so these are going to be our daily expected moves. Remember, if we get outside of those daily expected moves, we have a 68% chance for some kind of bounce. And remember this, where is that daily expected move sitting right now? Remember, I told you at the beginning of this video that they are very telling of what's going on right now. And so we could see some kind of breakdown, but maybe we see that actually break back to the upside because they are so close together. This means that not only do you have a 68% chance to land here on Monday, but in the month of April, we have a 68% chance to land above this line right here. So we could be seeing some kind of dramatic drop, sudden drop, and then we see that thing buy back up. So we have to still be trading like water. That's something we say a lot on this channel. That's why we went over a little bit of risk management over the weekend and the importance of being adaptable in this market. So the SPY dropping down from this level, well, if it did some kind of sudden move, if we do something like that and then we buy back up, that would make total sense. So look for this area right here to act as support right in between 506 and 505. I think that'll be very, very telling. But the other important thing about these, we'll just go with the weekly ranges. Notice this from last week. We're no longer at a new high for that weekly range, right? We keep making a weekly range to the upside that's up in this level saying, hey, we could go higher. Right now, the options market itself is telling you that the directions for stock is this way, right? It's because it is shifting down, and that is something to pay attention to. And we're going to go into those shorter time frames right now. I believe the best chart for Monday is going to be the 30-minute. I really do. And if we get that positivity, well, we can use this as some form of resistance. And then if we actually see this break down, this is where it gets a little bit interesting, okay? We have to pay attention to downside because we could get some kind of dramatic shock. Remember, Iran did send out some drone missiles and stuff like that over the weekend, and maybe we get some kind of response from Israel. Geopolitical news sometimes can affect the stock market, so we very well may see some kind of gap down into this area. So if we see that gap down, remember, this is when we can use that area as resistance. So if we gap below this point, that would be pretty telling if we're going to head lower. I am leaning towards us getting a reaction down here at this area. I really, really am. I think that we are going to set up a big head and shoulders where we come down to this area, we see some kind of rapid buying back up, and then we see that drop off again. I really think this left head and right shoulders is one of the best things to form for a trader. And remember, I'm leaning towards a bear market. I'm not saying this isn't a crash or anything like that. I'm not saying it is one at this point. I'm just saying if we head lower to these levels, I really expect us to be able to hold up and then maybe see that ripped away by the end of the week with some kind of right shoulder. Now, because April is telling us that we need to end above these yellow lines, that scenario would be kind of ignoring that. So going up to a 2-hour, all I want to pay attention to is if this thing can build back and go positive. I actually think we still have the opportunity if we get some good earnings and things like that and things start to de-escalate overseas, we could see some kind of drop down and then actually end up making a new high. We're open to multiple scenarios. It will really help you out as a trader to be open to these scenarios. And the fact that if we ended if the options market's right and we end in this yellow zone, well, then we wouldn't be able to just go up, create that right shoulder. We may get some kind of complex right shoulder, right? Do something like this, extend that for quite some time until May. So that is very possible. This is probably the scenario I'm leaning towards the most, but I just wanted to state that we could head higher as we react upward from this level. Remember, this level here is going to be very important when we look at the Qs. Okay, so the Qs are doing the similar thing. Now the Q is still holding up at this high, but you notice that it is shifting down from the previous week. So take that with with a grain of salt here because the Qs look like they might be able to hold up a little bit better. They have a good moving average right here, that the weekly 20. So we're going to pay attention to that today. We're going to go show that for a moment. But first, you got to get these on your chart. So to the upside, the weekly range, 43 to the upside, and the downside range 427.11, which is sitting around that monthly expected move as well. So you notice that even though the SPY is very close to breaking through that monthly expected move, the Qs are still kind of in the middle here, not necessarily going and testing that just yet. So if we see that come down to this area, well, what would be happening here on the weekly scale? Well, if we were able to see some kind of drop down to the monthly expected move, maybe even this week, early on this week, that would be very telling. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. But I just wanted to show if we actually got a reaction down, we actually could get a test of this 20, and maybe we see some buying from that area. So do not be convinced this has to go down in one big drop, right? It very well can, and it can continue as we are in negative trends, and these are starting to shift down, telling you that even the options market is expecting kind of a negative trend there as well, downward price action. But pay attention to this because we could get some kind of reaction around this level. Now, what that would do, if we go look at a 2-hour for the Qs, what that would do, remember we were talking about a head and shoulders for the SPY. What if we come down into this area and create that head and shoulders right at that monthly expected move, right at that 20-week moving average, and we get some kind of reaction down like this, and then we pop right back up, and then we see that fall back down. I think this is a very likely scenario at this point. Maybe we get some kind of drop, people buy into the earnings, and then we see that drop again. We'll have to pay attention to that going forward. But remember, if we see positivity going into Monday, just to be open to all scenarios, right? Even though it looks like the futures may react down, we're going to pull up Bitcoin right after this to show you guys why the futures might head down. But we could get that reaction up. Now, will that reaction up hold? This is where that resistance could come in. So if people get bullish randomly on Monday, just pay attention to this level up here, this daily expected move, 443.27 to the upside, 433.27 to the downside. And if you're new here, this is just what the options market has priced in for tomorrow. And so if we get outside of that, you have a 68% chance to land back within it. If we get outside of it to the downside, you have a 68% chance to land within it. Once you start to get outside and hold outside, that's when you can see something more dramatic happen, right? We can see something a little bit more dramatic happen. So pay attention to this going forward. Usually I like to pay attention to when we test the retest on the weekly for some more dramatic price action. If you do something like this, well, we could head towards a weekly. So if we gap down to this area, use it as resistance, we actually could go get that test very early on in the week. And that might be very telling because you're outside of the monthly, you're outside of the weekly, you're outside of the daily, all within the same day. That would be great. And we're going to talk about that during our stock market live. So join us every morning of this week as we are going live every single morning. Quick note, thank you so much for liking, subscribing. I hope you guys find this information helpful. If you guys would like to take a course on this, I'm doing 25% off right now with the code WATER to the next 25 people. I think there's about 15 left. So grab those while they last. Remember, we're seeing some downward price action, and maybe we'll leave that coupon code if there's a few left available to some people live throughout the week. But make sure to go down the link in the description, check out that course. It'd be very good to learn about this, and it gives you a bear market strategy for when volatility is higher, and volatility looks like it's about to creep higher this week. So think about getting that this weekend. Code WATER to get 25% off only this weekend, okay? Next 15 people. So paying attention to Bitcoin here, I wanted to do the daily, okay? I just wanted to show you guys how it reacted to that missile, those drone missiles that were launched by Iran, okay? So we're seeing a downward push. We saw a loss of almost 5%. At the maximum here, though, you know, we'll take it from the closing here. At the max here, we were down almost 9%. Okay, so that could happen, but notice this, we're getting those wicks up at this point. So we're actually seeing some buying up at this point after that news kind of fizzled out. I think people are going to wait for Israel's response going forward, and maybe they're delayed on that. Maybe it happens right away. If it happens right away, we could see another drop. If it's delayed a little bit, we have the opportunity for people to get a little positive, okay? So I just wanted to show you how that news did affect it down, but now we're seeing these wicks like there's buying at this area. So we have to pay attention to that. Maybe we get some kind of retest for Bitcoin, but really, I just want you to pay attention to this in relation to stocks. Maybe they have that reaction on Monday, and then we see buying up throughout the week. So just pay attention to the stock market. We can kind of take a little bit of information from Bitcoin and see the overall sentiment after that news is down at this point. So we're going to be looking tomorrow morning, see if the futures can gap us lower or something like that. And I think that'll be telling if we're at some key levels. All right, now going back into it, the next one we wanted to go over was Apple, right? We want to look at Apple. Apple's looking very, very strong up in this area. So all I wanted to do was bring up a 30-minute and show, as of right now, we haven't seen that curl up in a positive territory. So this one's kind of hard to pay attention to really find any kind of signals. All you know here is we've seen dramatic sell-offs from this area a few times now, 2, 3, 4 times now, and we've used it as support. So we know this area is very important. If we see positivity early on, I'd be looking for some kind of divergence. I'd be paying attention. I'd be paying close attention to my weekly expected moves for these individual stocks, which you can get down in the description below for my Patreon, where we actually give trade setups as well. One of these that we were talking about a lot live was Apple. We gave this Apple setup here, and overall it was a good stock to practice risk management, because you're in, you're out, you're in, you're out, you're in, you lose 10%, you lose 10%, you make 100, and I think one person, someone in the live chat literally said that they bought at 58 cents and it was worth 750 or something like that when they sold. This is a great trade, and you notice losing those, being risk managed, allowed us to not lose a bunch of money in this, and then boom, we see that rocket up, we see that reaction there, we see the 2-hour curl up, all that good stuff, and now we're in a zone where we could see some selling. So just pay attention to that going forward. Apple not giving the best structure for a downward move. Now, Tesla, a little bit different story. Now, this was a trade setup here, right? 30-minute. We just had to be careful with it. The daily divergence still for Tesla says it kind of wants to go up from here. But with that news, we could see something bad happen. So what I wanted to point out here was just making a little bit of a trend here, making some consolidation. Maybe we're doing something like this, making some kind of, triangle up in this area, just drawing out my ideas as of right now. But what I mainly want to focus on is the fact that we get these big price swings, right? Big swing down, big swing up, smaller swing down, smaller swing up, smaller swing down, maybe smaller swing up, but maybe we start to break to the downside. So I think Tesla has a good opportunity to roll over because the 2 hours starting to go negative. Now, the thing about this is, what were we talking about with Tesla? Well, we're talking about 154.78. 154.78 could become pretty important because I think this is a good support level. So first, I would be paying attention to these lows down here. If they're taken out, maybe I create some kind of divergence in the near price action on the 2 hour, and we actually see that bounce come with Tesla, and I think people might get in on that. So that would be before earnings, right? So if we drop off before earnings, Tesla reports some good stuff. We'll have to see with that. Remember, earnings is a 50-50 flip, so I most likely won't be paying attention, or I won't be taking any trades around Wednesday, the 24th of April for Tesla, because I'm not willing to try to guess black or red. I'm really trying to play the probabilities, and I have no idea what numbers they are going to produce. It's something that I highly encourage a lot of traders. As of right now, moving sideways. So what could this be on the daily scale? Well, it's sideways price action. We could be just getting some kind of, longer flagging here. So we could actually be doing something like this, right? We could be doing something like this. We're kind of just in a range at this point. So we want to pay attention to any kind of move lower, because if we start to cross back down on this daily MACD, it's not going to be good news. And right now you do have like a little, you can even see it, it looks kind of head and shoulders like. We talked about that way back here, it forming some kind of head and shoulders to actually break down. So what I would pay attention to for further downside, meaning we're going to break through 154.78 and keep going, I would look for if this MACD is rolling over negative territory. And then I'd pay attention for any kind of bounce, maybe with earnings or something like that. We get some kind of divergence down here. And all we want to do, if you're going to, right, I highly encourage you not to, but if you are going to play any kind of earnings play, right, well, if you see something like this, and then we see some divergence down here, you want to take a play, okay, might put a stop here. Put a stop here. It will be very, very good for you, because then you won't be one of those people, one of those 10%, or you'll be in the 10% of people who do this correctly and not one of the 90% that lose their whole portfolio or their whole account. Okay, so just pay attention to this. It looks like Tesla could roll over into negative territory. The trend is still down. You have a lower high, you have a high, you have a lower high again. So now we're looking to make that lower low. If that happens, then the negative trend very well could continue. And then we'll just pay attention if any kind of good news gives us some upward moves with some divergence down here. Amazon, we talked about this on Saturday, how this is really just insider selling. You can see it based on this. You're not necessarily seeing an upward move, people willing to hold that move, some people taking profit, and then another upward move. It does not look like good structure. This looks like there is insider sellings every single time we head up. So I would pay attention to that. Remember, the 2 hour still up here in positive territory. It did curl over, looks like it wants to curl up again. So Amazon looking a little stronger than most, and it would really have to break down. We really need Amazon to start to see a breakdown from here. But as retail buyers get bought buy this up, you could see some kind of sudden drop if that sell button gets pushed. We start to push below lower levels, and then we start to see, the retail market actually sell this thing off. We could really get the algorithms involved and start to head lower. So just pay attention here. But this is a strong move. Maybe we want to go lower, set up some kind of lower high before we actually want to break down. And maybe that gives us the head and shoulders on the SPY. So we'll pay attention to Amazon going forward, but just on the daily scale is the main thing we want to pay attention to actually for Amazon. It's got a big divergence up here. So if that crosses down, it's not looking good for Amazon. You're most likely going to go test some kind of level of 166.12 over the next month or so. Nvidia, even in the post market, was looking pretty bad. It was coming down even lower in the post market, so just pay attention to that. We could see some kind of gapping down, but we can pay attention to our weekly expected moves, so you can get those over on Patreon. But we were talking about Nvidia. Once we saw these bars, we were like, hey, a good area to test would be 841.46, and we saw that come outside of the weekly move very early on in the week, and we see a positive reaction. Very, very good trade here. Now, if we want to see positivity, you're going to see this daily curl up, but as we have the ability to gap lower, we have to pay attention to downside. So what I wanted to do is just pull up a 2 hour and show you guys how this thing is rolling over in negative territory and how it can set up a divergence. So even though people will get very, very bearish if we start to see a sudden drop, I'm trading like water. I know that stocks will do what they're going to do. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down, and it usually doesn't happen in one big drop. So if I'm thinking, hey, this comes down to this area, it's outside of the weekly expected move, and that thing pops early on in the week, well, we could set up some kind of divergence. What about the divergence? Well, you'd be closer to crossing up, maybe getting a positive trend here. So if we do that, that would be very interesting going forward. So I'm going to be paying attention to my weekly expected moves for Nvidia, especially the downside early on in the week, to find some kind of trade setup for a bounce. Because if I keep being bearish, and then I see some kind of bounce, I start to, come back. I start to maybe break even. I start to maybe lose money. So what I want to do is just say, okay, there's the drop. Here's my weekly expected move. This is all the option market expects. We start to see upward price action. I'm out. Okay, now this goes up. Maybe I even take a play here because this is very good divergence. And if it's by that weekly expected move, it can be a solid setup. So we'll talk about this live if it actually is going to happen. But right now, I just wanted to show you negative territory is there. So negative trend is most likely, and most likely you are going to test this low or make a new one if we see another red bar early on Monday. Now, AMD, this is one that if it drops from here, it's not the best news, right? You may head down all the way to 148.80 or something like that, because this is an area where we really have to see a bounce. This is kind of your neckline at this point, and we haven't really gotten that reaction. So if we don't even create that neckline, we can start to break down and use this area as resistance very early. We're in a negative trend. The only thing about AMD here is it's kind of saying, I really want to bounce. My momentum to the downside is low. So what if we just get a lackluster reaction and then we see that buy back up? So pay attention here. If this 2 hour rolls up and goes positive, you're most likely going to see a good push here. I just wanted to point that out. You're most likely going to see a good push here. Will that curl over the daily MACD at that point? We'll have to see. But the important part here is if we get some kind of drop and then pop, we actually could see a lower high from AMD because it's a little deeper in negative territory. So we could just do something like this right before earnings. Maybe earnings are bad for it or something like that. We still want to pay attention to the actual numbers that come out. And I most likely won't be paying attention to AMD around Tuesday, April 30th, because I can find a different stock that's showing a setup that's not having earnings. Right? I don't have to play earnings, and that's a big thing. If you just stay out of these earnings plays, you can save yourself a lot of stress, and you can save yourself probably a lot of money. But I think the overall likeliest scenario for AMD at this point is we drop a little lower, maybe it's a little lackluster, and then that starts to pop back up, and then we see another drop, giving us some kind of head and shoulders on the daily scale. Now that would be good for an overall trader, but if we are going to dramatically start dropping from here, that means that we're most likely going to drop into this level down here of 135, get some kind of reaction up, and then start to fall with this liquidity in here. So I think a liquidity grab is likely. If we're going to see a bigger bounce, maybe we go retest that neckline again, right? We drop all the way down like this, we retest the neckline, and then we see that negative trend continue as you are in negative territory. So pay attention to that for AMD. Remember Meta, this one looking similar to Amazon. This is a great signal at this point. I just wanted to point that out. But first, we got to talk about, hey, look, insider selling. Doesn't this look like Amazon? Insider selling. We know Zuckerberg's selling this bad boy. So as of right now, you got some flagging. Maybe that does head upward. But as the geopolitical stuff not looking very good, and you're getting a confirmation here. You're getting a confirmation of this divergence, of the momentum shifting down, and you're really close to negative territory. So we could get some kind of big drop. So pay attention to Meta around this 453.08 level. And especially if we, I'd really pay attention to that level if we break through 480. I think 480 is the very important point to pay attention to. So if we actually see a drop to 480 and then we see that buying back up and we see that positivity, maybe we go up a little bit and test this trend line again. So we'll pay attention to that going forward. We have the opportunity maybe to create triple divergence, but as this is so close to negative territory, you have to say it's got a good shot of starting a negative trend, and most likely this is going to start to head down from here, but we want to be open to all scenarios going forward. A couple other ones I just want to point out. Microsoft not able to break this as of right now, but this looks like a great trade as well. The daily showing you triple divergence across the triple divergence across here. We were telling you be very careful over the weekend taking calls because we could get some bad news that send us lower, but as we are testing some key areas. So if Microsoft wanted to, look how it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter and building a bunch of liquidity at this high, we could see a sudden drop from Microsoft. Where would we head to? Most likely down to 398. I think 398 would be a good level for us to get a reaction from. Then we see that bounce up, and then we can break through the overall bigger wedge that we're in. Now, if we're going to see that positivity continue, what's going to happen here is this is going to drop down, right? This is going to drop down. It's going to cross up into positive territory, right? We're going to go towards that center line. Then we cross back up into positive territory, and maybe we have another push left in this for quite some time. So be open to both scenarios. But as of right now, with the geopolitical stuff going on, you have to be very cautious to downside. And I think most likely a downward trend is likely for the next few months. Google, this is one that I'm actually in as of right now. I think that this looked pretty good. It's overextended to the upside, just a very parabolic move from the low here, March 5th, right? Just a parabolic move over the last month or month and a half. So I'm paying attention to this one. I really like this one. I mean, it's got divergence across the way here. The price on it was very good. And then we have 2-hour divergences, 30-minute divergences, all that good stuff. I just want to show you how it's wicking out at this trend line here. I didn't adjust that to this high or anything like that. I trusted my trend line here, seeing that start to fade back down. So what I wanted to do was show you guys, well, first of all, on the daily scale, how this could probably even come fill this gap, but I would expect gap support and things like that to come in, but you could actually just react to the 20. So I'm still paying attention if there is another upward move, and then I think that gets ripped away very soon, but wanted to pay attention to a 2-hour first, show you guys the triple divergence here. This is something that I was actually posting to Patreon. So we showed you guys this setup. We said, wait for that to cross. It crossed by the end of the day. So now you're seeing, all right, red bars here. Now I can get a little position in this, see this start to fall down, roll over that daily. That daily starts to crash down a little bit. We can start to see it pull down. So if we wanted to see some kind of reaction right here around 151, that would make a lot of sense, right? We do this, we create that right shoulder. Now we have left, head, and right shoulder on the way down. It would look very good for a trader, but overall, it looks like the momentum for Google is kind of dead. But I believe that people are still in the bullish mindset on the psychology side. I think that we are going to see bumps in the road, and that's why I think it's going to be a bear market. So make sure to use code WATER in the link in the description for my course to get 25% off, because it'll give you a bear market strategy and teach you about these indicators, divergence, all that good stuff. It is very, very good. Now, going forward, I wanted to talk about volatility. This thing's starting to come down. The first thing I wanted to point out, I thought we were going to see positivity this week if there wasn't any geopolitical news. Why? 2-hour divergence. 2-hour divergence forming up here. If that could confirm, then I would say that positivity is coming throughout the week. We could actually see this fade back down, get a daily divergence, right? We were talking about it creating a daily divergence down here. So it could do something like this and fill this gap down here and then start to head up again. But it doesn't necessarily look like that's the case. If we see volatility start to climb here and go even higher, you're getting even closer to that 50 crossing the 200. Now we could get some kind of pop and then get a lower high in the stock market, giving us a higher low for the VIX, maybe reacting off of the 200 or the 50. So if this does something like this, drops off dramatically, maybe that 200 is able to catch up by then, or the 50 is able to catch up. Just really want to pay attention to that. This is in crash scenario as of right now. You're holding above the 200. You have the 50 that's about to cross. You're in positive territory for the MACD on the daily. We showed you yesterday it's just going positive on the weekly, which is what we were talking about. Once that goes positive, it's going to be very, very bad. And literally the second it goes positive for the weekly, boom, we see even more volatility come in. I mean, this thing was up how much on the day here? It was up 28%, almost 29% in one day. So UVXY probably looking pretty good at this point. And I love that there was a split just the day before. But I just wanted to tell you, volatility is giving you a crash scenario. You just need a little bit more confirmation, and a confirmation with the price action. Now, what do I think? I think the Fed kind of likes this. It's kind of going to force a rate cut, right? It's kind of going to force TLT might actually see some good price action here, because people might run to safety. We might see a flight to safety. Now, will that just be a reaction up and then things start to fizzle out and we head down again and those yields go even higher with TLT coming down? That's something to pay attention to. I don't want to look too much into this, because now that we have something geopolitical happening, you can kind of see this, ignore technicals and start to just head up, head down, do that kind of stuff. So we'll talk about this if it creates some kind of 2-hour divergence or something like that up in this area. The main thing we need to know is if that starts to go extremely positive and break out of here, you're most likely going to see TLT explode a little bit. So what we're going to pay attention to is if that rolls up, will it roll back down? Because that would create a little bit more turbulence, because we'd see rates go a little bit higher, maybe things fizzle out, and then it wants to kind of keep going down in this wedge. So that's something to pay attention to going on into this week. But it looks like some good trade setups are going to set up for us, maybe even come Monday. So the main takeaway here is we had to be careful over the weekend, and we said that multiple times, especially to the call side, if something bad happens geopolitically overseas, and that is happening as of right now. So we can expect some downward movement, but is that going to be bad enough news to really turn over people's thinking? Are they going to switch from bullish to bearish? We'll have to really see, but maybe right when they start to get bearish, we see some kind of bounce. So just be open to stocks bouncing after some kind of downward move, and we'll be paying attention to that with you guys live. Okay, so every single morning we do show up live, and if you show up live and there's a few of those coupon codes left, we're going to give it to you. But if you want to get it before Monday, really learn about this stuff before this craziness happens, you can learn about divergences, indicators, all that good stuff, and even get a bear market strategy for when volatility is higher. Make sure to use code WATER in my link in the description for the course. But I really appreciate you guys liking, subscribing. You guys are always fantastic. I look forward to the live stream this week, as it is going to be quite the eventful week. And we were calling that March would be trappy. We were calling that April is most likely going to have a top, and we're seeing a top right now. Is that going to lead to a correction or some kind of crash? We'll have to find out, and we'll pay attention to it in real time and take the trades as they come and go. All right, guys, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your Sunday, and come back tomorrow morning and we'll start talking about this stock market and making some money. Hope you guys have a good night. Peace.